Welcome to The Explainer, where we turn really complex stuff into presentations that actually make sense. Today, we're jumping headfirst into probably the strangest and most controversial book in the entire Bible, the Book of Revelation.
For, 2,000 years, images just like this one, monstrous beasts, cosmic wars, fire and brimstone, have both terrified and totally captivated people. It's a book that seriously feels like it was written in a fever dream.
So most people today read Revelation as a literal play-by-play prediction of our future, right? A kind of roadmap to the end of the world. But what if that's a complete misunderstanding of what the author was even trying to do? What if it's not about our future at all, but about his own traumatic past? Okay, let's really dive into this.
To really decode this book, we need to step into the world of its author. He was a prophet named John, and he wasn't writing this in some quiet, peaceful library. No. He was in exile, stuck on the island of Patmos, right in the middle of the chaos of the Roman Empire.
This right here, this is the first huge piece of the puzzle. John wasn't gazing into a crystal ball trying to see the 21st century. He was a survivor. He was processing the collective trauma of his people in the only way he knew how, through this powerful, symbolic prophecy.
And the timing here is absolutely everything. John is writing just 20 years after something completely unthinkable happened. The Roman army didn't just crush the Jewish revolt. They burned the great temple in Jerusalem, the sacred center of his entire universe, to the ground. For him, this wasn't some distant historical event. It was a fresh, gaping wound.
So in an empire where speaking out against the government could literally get you killed, you couldn't just pass out an anti-Roman pamphlet. It was a death sentence. So like other prophets before him, John wrote in code. He created this incredibly powerful, symbolic piece of anti-Roman propaganda. And right here, you can see exactly how he pulled it off.
So check this out. This is how the code works. These crazy symbols weren't just random. Babylon the Great Whore, that was the new code name for Rome. The multi-headed beast from the sea, that represented Roman imperial power and its line of emperors. And that infamous numbers, 666, well, most scholars are pretty sure it's a Hebrew numerical code. It's called gematria for the name Nero Caesar, who was this notoriously cruel emperor that people were terrified might come back from the dead.
But hold on, because Rome wasn't John's only enemy. His letters show us he was also fighting a war on a second front, a kind of civil war happening inside his own movement. Just when you think you've got the villain figured out, the story gets a whole lot more complicated.
See, John was a purist. He was convinced that to be truly faithful, followers of Jesus had to stay holy and completely separate from the corrupting influence of Roman culture. But he was horrified when he looked around and saw other groups starting to compromise, blending in, and in his eyes, basically collaborating with the enemy.
And you can see this division ran deep. It actually echoed a debate that had been raging for decades. On one side, you've got John's super strict separatist vision, but on the other, you have the legacy of the Apostle Paul, who had argued that for non-Jewish followers, hey, it was okay to eat meat sold in the marketplace, even if it had been part of some pagan sacrifice, because those idols aren't even real anyway.
And this is where John's anger just boils over. For him, a Jew following the Jewish Messiah, these other groups who were likely non-Jews following Paul's teachings were trying to claim the sacred identity of Israel without actually accepting its laws and disciplines. He saw them as total imposters, calling them a synagogue of Satan who were stealing a birthright they hadn't earned.
So this intense insider conflict makes the next question even more fascinating. If Revelation was so locked into a specific time, a specific war, and even a specific religious argument, why is it the final explosive book of the Bible? Why did this one survive when so many others just disappeared?
Well, we now know, thanks to incredible discoveries like the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt, that John's book wasn't one of a kind. Turns out this was a whole genre of writing back then. There were dozens of other revelations floating around, all offering divine secrets and visions. But most of them just faded into history.
So why did John's book win out? What made it so special? Well, it seems that its core message was just so potent and timeless. While other revelations focused on personal spiritual enlightenment, John offered a raw political fantasy. It's a story of the powerless crying out for cosmic justice against a corrupt and seemingly unbeatable empire. That visceral story of a divine takedown, where Babylon will eventually fall in blood and fire, was so powerful it could be lifted out of its original context and used by any group in any century that felt oppressed by the beast of its own time.
So understanding Revelation as a product of its time doesn't make it any less powerful. If anything, it makes it more human. It transforms the book from this confusing puzzle about the future into a raw, gut-wrenching cry for justice from the past. And it's a cry that really challenges us to ask, who are the oppressed, and what are the empires in our own world today?